That's recording now. So I am, like Allison, going to talk about my experience using Sapling, but I was using the anatomy content. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. My name is Lynn. And there we go. Okay. So Mount Mary University is a Catholic all-women's university in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The undergraduate programs are 100% women. Graduate programs do admit men, but, you know, I don't see many in my class. We have about 1,400 students total, 860 undergrad, 525 graduate students. Undergraduate programs, as I said, are open to women only. Graduate programs are co-ed. We have more than 30 undergraduate majors and 9 graduate programs, and, as I mentioned before during introduction, small class sizes. So our faculty-to-student ratio is 1 to 10. Now, another thing that I want to say before I move on from this slide is that I was, or have been, resistant to using any sorts of solutions like this in the past for a couple of different reasons. So my student population, we have a lot of students who are underprepared. We have a lot of students who are not particularly financially well off. And so they sometimes will just tell me how hard it is for them to get their textbooks. And so if I'm assigning a textbook and a bunch of other stuff, I just begin to feel like a really big bad guy. So, you know, I'm resistant to making them purchase new things. So when Ms. Milling contacted me and said, hey, we're doing this, it's free this semester, do you want to try it out? I said, oh, great, this is a way for me to try this without charging my students money, because I don't want to charge them if it's not going to help them. So this gave me an opportunity to try it, which was a big incentive for me to try it because I wasn't charging my students to do that, just for me to play. And another thing I think is that when you're, I know that at the small scale, students tend to think that if they're doing, content that I didn't design, that they are, like, I'm not doing my job. So I think maybe it's a little different if you do have really big classes where it's kind of like, well, you know, the instructor, I don't really know them that much anyway, but in this case, they really do know me pretty well. So it's just sort of a different feeling. But I don't think that that was a problem, so that was useful for me to see that my students didn't get too bent out of shape about that. And I offered plenty of my own content too. So in my human anatomy class, we offer 2 sections every spring. We just offer it in the spring. Each section normally has 14 to 16 students. I'll let it go to 20, but the classroom won't hold more than that. The student population, we include science majors, so biology and chemistry majors. Many of them will take anatomy, pre-nursing and occupational therapy, and this is not an A&P class. So I don't know that anyone else here teaches any anatomy and physiology.
I doubt we have that.
So physiology is the fun part. So from a teacher's perspective, and anatomy is the less fun part because it's really all memorization. There's tools that you can use to make the memorization easier, and the students who are able to help find those tools tend to do better in the class, but it's really memorization. So I wanted to give you a sense of what is being covered and when. So in Exam 1 covers the skeletal system. Exam 2 covers muscles, skeletal muscles. Exam 3 covers the nervous system and circulatory system. Exam 4 covers respiratory, digestive, urinary, and reproductive systems. Now this is going to become more important when I show you my data because number 1, that's hard. Bones are hard. There are a lot of them. You have to know a lot of different names of different bones, markings on bones, right? Articulations with other bones. It's really challenging. It's a lot to memorize. Muscles are even worse. Same thing. You need to know names of these obscure muscles found crazy places in the wrists and hands and, you know, extensor pollicis brevis. What? It's a completely different language that they've never been exposed to before. So it's hard. And then you also need to know origins and insertions with that as well and actions. So it's very complicated. Exam 3 and Exam 4 are a lot easier. Now the lab exams, because this is where things get a little unexpected, but exam 1 covers skeletal and muscles. So this is actually the hardest exam that I give every semester. This is the one people just like a chunk don't actually pass every single semester. The lab exam 2 is a little bit easier. Again, it's covering that easier content. People know what a stomach is. They know what lungs are, right? So that's easier. So I implemented 2 main changes to the class in 2006 spring, just finished with it. I implemented Sapling, and then I made the classroom exams a little bit harder, or tried to make them a little bit harder. I did not balloon them, so I don't know for sure, but I tried to make them a little bit harder because I decided to allow students to drop 1 exam because, I mean, the content you could tell, right, they're getting quizzed on the content multiple ways, multiple times, and it alleviates some degree of stress and anxiety if they're like, why could you drop 1? So if I fail 1 for some reason, it's okay. And so anxiety levels is very helpful. But then, you know, I told them I was going to try and make the exams a little harder, but I didn't want to. Yeah. So I think you already understand what Sapling is, but this is just taken from the website, that it is an online, Sapling's online homework combines the latest interactive learning technology with industry-leading support and a focus on real measurable results. So it's online homework system, and in anatomy, the thing that correlates the best with success in the class is practice. The more time they spend with the material, right, because it's memorization. They have to spend time with it. They have to go over it again and again and again. And Sapling forced them to do that. Now, of course, we always have those students, many people have mentioned them, that are going to do it 50 times. They're going to ace it. They're not going to struggle. But then there are those students who are working full-time, have 2 kids at home, they're only parents, right? Their husband, the male partner is not involved. And, you know, they are also doing school full-time. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it, but they do it, right? So they need sometimes a little bit of extra guidance. And honestly, it's not those students that normally struggle, right? It's the first-year students who are don't understand how to schedule their time very effectively. So Sapling helps. So how did I implement it? What I did was for every single chapter in the book, I had a homework assignment and I had a quiz. So the homework assignments had not every question that they gave me for my textbook. I did curate it in order to be more consistent with what I actually covered, because it's an introductory level anatomy class and I cover everything. And then the quizzes, I took the hardest, what I thought were the hardest questions from the homework assignments, and I put them into the quizzes. And the quizzes, I only gave them 1 chance, right? They went in, they got 1 try, and then if they got it wrong, they got it wrong. With the homework assignments, they could go in and try again and again and again and again and again, and then we get a little penalty every time, but for the most part, they did very well on the homework assignments. The quizzes, the idea was that they would get really good on the homework and then ace the quizzes. But again, they were very low point values, so it's just sort of enough incentive to get them to do it, but not enough to really hurt them if they didn't. So what I did was I looked at grades on exams for my students. I've taken averages of them. So for this semester and the last 5 years, 2011 to 2015, I averaged all the grades because I wanted to see, did Sapling have any impact? Now, for the exams, and that's where I'm going to start, so just those regular classroom exams, not the lab exams, I always write different exams, right? I never give them the same exam any year in a row. I did not balloon them, and so it's more difficult to do statistics, so I just didn't bother doing statistics on them. But this is the data with standard deviation. So you can see, again, Sapling year, this last year I tried to write slightly harder questions. Looks like I probably did that, but they don't seem too different, right? Like if I had done statistics, I don't think they would say there was any significant difference between this year and last year. So you know, these students aren't exceptionally strong students in general, right? They're sort of consistent with the same students, at least on this exam performance, that I have seen for the last 5 years before this. Yeah.
So the left column is the cumulative last 4 years, and the right column is
just last year's Sapling.
Why didn't you break it out per year? Because the aggregate data for the last 4 years may hide significant variation in the individual years.
I could have done that. They weren't too
They weren't different. Okay.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of variation. So it just didn't, I mean, it seemed like kind of cluttering things up. And I mean, really, I should have done that and done statistics on every year and I would have checked the variations. But like I said, it just didn't seem like there was enough variation to warrant it. But the lab exam grades, that's where things get interesting. So the same numbers of students took these. So you can say the same, like 28 students on about 135 students. But the thing that's different is I did actually give them the same lab exam. So I don't hand the lab exams back. It's kind of hard to do, right? You got the lab exam set up. I can't give that back to them at the end. So I've sort of taken that to my advantage, and instead of changing the exam every year, I use the same one because then I get a sort of metric of like, okay, have I gotten any better with this lab exam stuff? Because they really struggle, and I keep trying to find things to do that make it better for them, but nothing ever really seems to work. So it gives me a metric. And this is where it's very interesting, because for the first lab exam, this is the hard one, right? This is the one where every single year it's a 70% average, right? And before this, it was actually lower. And then after I did something different, it got a little bit better, but it used to be like 65% average, so that data I did not include. But this year, and I did statistics, right, because it was the same exam, so I felt like I could do statistics, I did t-tests, two-tailed, and the P is 0.00004. So they did significantly better this year. Now, on the second lab exam, they also did better, but not significantly better. So I don't know if maybe in another year with a little bit more data, I would see something significant happening there. I don't know. Now, of course, I have some hypotheses about this, and again, we all know, right, that correlation does not equal causation. So Sapling could have absolutely nothing to do with it. But the fact that I really didn't change anything else makes me think Sapling probably has something to do with it. Maybe, so these are some of my hypotheses, maybe writing harder exams compelled the students to work harder on the lab exams, but I don't know why they wouldn't have worked harder on the class exams. So, you know, maybe I got significantly better at teaching students to study for the lab exam this year. That seems unlikely, too. Or my other hypothesis, well, and there is another thing. So there was a new tutor, and some students used that tutor, but not a significant number of students used that tutor. That should skew the whole data set as much as it was. So I don't really think that that's it either. And then my other hypothesis is that Sapling gave students more practice. And maybe it was in a way that helped them to do better on the lab exam. Again, I am very baffled by this. I remember seeing that exam, the lab exam, and just being like, how is the average this high? I don't get it.
What was your sample size for the lab exam?
28 for this year, and 135 before that.
Okay, so I'm in wrong glasses. Great, right there back at the hotel. On the previous screen, how many points did they improve from the left to the right?
So from a 70 up to like an 82, 83 average. It's significant.
Yeah, something happened.
Something happened.
Yeah.
And Sapling's the only thing I really substantially changed this year. I mean, I always change things a little bit, but I don't know.
And you also probably haven't had a significantly stronger group of students because in the other exams,
exactly,
you didn't have a measurable change.
Exactly. So that leads me to believe that something else is playing a role here. It's not just that these students were, for some reason, just exceptional, because that does not play out with the other exams. So, I don't know. So what did my students say about Sapling? And so I just pulled some quotes from the survey that Sapling gave them to get feedback about the program for their purposes. But I enjoyed some of the comments. So I like using Sapling because I like being able to go back and use the questions and diagrams as a study tool. They found that really helpful. I like using Sapling because it allowed myself to have a review of the lesson material learned in class. It helped embed the materials learned through repeating and reviewing the lesson over again in my own time. So they go back to it, they reuse it. You know, they're using it as a study tool. I really liked using Sapling Learning because it allows you to do the homework with feedback right away if you get a question wrong, and helps make you learn the material. So that is another part of it, right? They do get feedback, they can ask for hints if they don't know a question, and so they found that part helpful. I really enjoyed Sapling because I was able to work at my own pace for each section of material before an exam. It was also useful to help me study. I would definitely recommend that you continue using Sapling, which I'm planning on doing. So that is it. If anyone has any questions or thoughts about what's happening, I would appreciate it.
I don't necessarily have a question, but when if you wanted to go back and look at